My name is Olivia, and in my family, I'm the one everyone blames. I have two brothers, Jake and Ryan. Jake is the golden child, tall, athletic, and everyone's favorite. Ryan mostly follows Jake's lead, which means he laughs at every joke Jake makes about me. Our parents, Karen and Mark, always take Jake's side. No matter what happens, he's never in trouble. If I get upset, they tell me I'm overreacting. If Jake messes up, they say he's just having fun. Ryan doesn't prank me as much, but he never defends me. It's easier for him to stay on Jake's good side than to risk becoming the next target. Jake has been pulling pranks on me for as long as I can remember. They're not harmless. He's hidden my homework, so I'd get in trouble at school. He's dumped salt in my coffee. Once, he loosened the brakes on my bike, and when I fell, my parents told me to be more careful. Ryan laughed with Jake like it was the funniest thing in the world. The worst part is how my parents encourage it. They laugh along and tell me to lighten up. They never see how humiliating it is. If I get a good grade, Jake calls me a nerd in front of everyone. If I try to talk at dinner, he interrupts me. My parents don't stop him. Ryan joins in, even if he doesn't fully understand why. I've learned to avoid them when I can. I stay in my room with the door locked, pretending to be busy with homework. I imagine leaving for good. No more pranks, no more laughing at my expense, no more feeling like I'm the outsider in my own home. Sometimes I wonder if I'm invisible to them except when they need someone to pick on. They treat Jake like he's perfect and Ryan like he's learning from the best. I'm just the punchline. When I complain, they tell me I'm imagining things. When I stop talking altogether, no one notices. I've taught myself not to cry in front of them. If Jake ruins something for me, I swallow it down. But inside, I know this can't go on forever. People break when they're pushed too far. I didn't know the breaking point was coming so soon. I didn't know that one of Jake's jokes would change everything, not just for me, but for all of us. And when it happened, no one would be able to laugh it away. This time, the truth would be impossible to ignore. Jake's tricks started getting worse. At first, they were just annoying, but now they were starting to cause real problems for me. One morning, I woke up early to finish my homework. I left it on the table while I went to get a glass of water. When I came back, it was gone. I searched everywhere, under the couch, in my bag, even in the trash, but it wasn't there. I walked into the kitchen and saw Jake smirking while eating cereal. He didn't say anything, but I could tell he had taken it. Later at school, I had to tell my teacher I couldn't hand it in. Jake never admitted it, but I knew. Another time, I made myself a coffee before heading to study. It tasted strange, salty and bitter at the same time. My stomach turned after the first sip. I looked over at Jake, and he was trying not to laugh. He didn't even try to hide it for long. "Need more sugar?" he asked, grinning. My parents were there, and instead of saying anything to him, they laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd seen all week. The worst was when he messed with my bike. I had planned to ride to the library to return a book. The weather was nice, and I wanted some quiet time away from the house. I didn't notice anything wrong until I was halfway down the street. When I tried to slow down, the brakes felt loose and unsteady. The bike swerved, and I had to jump off before I fell hard. My hands and knees hit the ground, scraping against the pavement. The book I was carrying flew into the grass. My heart was racing, and my hands were shaking. When I got back home and told my parents, they didn't even look worried. "You probably didn't check it before you rode," my dad said. Jake sat in the corner, grinning like it was a private joke between us. Every time something like this happened, my parents told me to lighten up or stop making a big deal out of nothing. It was like they couldn't see how much it bothered me. Maybe they didn't want to. Maybe they just thought it was easier to laugh along with Jake. I started noticing something else too. Whenever I got good grades or a teacher praised me, Jake seemed to find a new way to mess with me. If I got a perfect score on a test, the next day he would hide something important from me or make a joke about how I was a teacher's pet. It felt like he didn't like it when I did well at anything. I began avoiding family gatherings. If I stayed around too long, I knew he would find some way to make me the punchline. I'd eat quickly, excuse myself, and go to my room. Sometimes I'd even pretend I had schoolwork, so I wouldn't have to come downstairs at all. Being around all of them at once made me feel trapped, like there was no one on my side. The more I kept my distance, the more Jake seemed to enjoy finding ways to pull me back in, just so he could embarrass me. I couldn't figure out why he was so determined to make me feel small. All I knew was that the less I saw of him, the safer I felt. It was Saturday evening, and the house smelled like roast chicken and garlic bread. My parents had invited a few relatives over, including Aunt Lisa, Uncle Rob, and 2 cousins. Everyone was in the dining room, talking loudly and passing around bowls of salad and mashed potatoes. I stayed in the kitchen for a while, helping to set out the last of the dishes, hoping to avoid too much attention. When it was finally time to eat, I carried my plate over to the table. Jake was already sitting there, chatting with Ryan and one of our cousins. There was an empty chair between Jake and Aunt Lisa, and I moved toward it. I pulled it out slightly, balancing my plate in one hand, and turned to lower myself down. Before I could sit, the chair was gone. Jake had yanked it back in one quick motion. I didn't even have time to catch myself. My feet slipped forward, and I dropped straight down onto the hardwood floor. My plate tipped, and a piece of chicken slid onto the ground beside me. A sharp, burning pain shot through my lower back, spreading down one leg. The impact sent a shock all the way up my spine. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The room went quiet for half a second, and then my parents burst out laughing. Karen slapped the table, tears forming in her eyes from laughing so hard. Mark leaned back in his chair, shaking his head like it was the best joke he'd seen all week. Jake was grinning, looking around to see who else was enjoying it. Ryan chuckled under his breath. Some of the relatives looked uncomfortable. Aunt Lisa's smile faded as she glanced at me on the floor. Uncle Rob laughed a little, but it was the awkward kind of laugh you give when you don't know what else to do. My cousins shifted in their seats, avoiding eye contact. I wanted to get up quickly, but the pain in my back made it hard to move. It felt like something deep inside had been knocked out of place. I forced myself to push up with one hand, my other hand pressed against the sore spot. My face felt hot, and I could tell my eyes were watering, but I didn't want to give Jake the satisfaction of seeing me cry. "Come on, Olivia," my mom said between laughs. "Don't be so dramatic. Sit down and eat before the food gets cold." My dad added, "It's just a joke. Lighten up." Jake slid the chair back into place, still smirking. I lowered myself onto it slowly this time, every movement sending another wave of pain through my back. My hands stayed in my lap, clenched tight, while everyone went back to their conversations as if nothing had happened. The smell of food made my stomach turn. I barely touched my plate, nodding occasionally when someone spoke to me, but my mind was fixed on the throbbing ache in my spine. Each laugh that drifted across the table sounded sharper, more hollow. I kept my head down, chewing slowly, pretending to listen, and waited for the dinner to end. Inside, I was counting the minutes until I could leave the table and be alone. When dinner was finally over, I stood up slowly, hoping no one would notice how stiff I was moving. The pain in my lower back was sharper now, each step sending a dull ache down my legs. I gripped the edge of the table for balance before letting go and heading toward the hallway. My legs felt shaky, as if they didn't trust me to hold my own weight. Jake noticed right away. "Careful there, Grandma," he said with a grin. "Don't want you breaking a hip." His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear, and a few people laughed. I kept my eyes forward and didn't answer. Every part of me wanted to get out of that room. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I had to pause. Lifting my foot onto the first step sent another shot of pain through my back. I held the railing tightly, pulling myself up one slow step at a time. Halfway up, I heard Jake calling after me. "Need me to get you a cane?" His laughter echoed up the stairs. I made it to my room and shut the door behind me. The moment I sat on the edge of the bed, I felt the ache grow heavier, like it was sinking deeper into my bones. I shifted to lie down, hoping it would ease up, but the pressure in my lower back didn't go away. Later that night, I went downstairs to find my parents in the living room. I told them I needed to see a doctor because the pain wasn't going away. Karen didn't look up from her phone. "You're fine. It's just a bruise. Give it a few days." Mark glanced over from the TV and said, "You're young. You'll heal." "I'm not fine," I tried again. "It's getting worse." Mark waved his hand like I was making too much of it. "You're being dramatic. Don't let Jake's little joke ruin the whole weekend." The next morning, I woke up with stiffness in my back so bad it took me a while to sit up. When I swung my legs over the side of the bed, I felt a strange tingling down my left leg, almost like it was falling asleep. I shook it off, thinking maybe I'd just been lying in a weird position. By the afternoon, the tingling had turned into numbness that didn't fade. I limped when I walked, trying to hide it from Jake. Of course, he noticed anyway. "Careful, Grandma," he said again, this time dragging out the word as if it were the funniest thing he could say. I ignored him, but I could feel his eyes on me every time I took a step. Over the next few days, the pain stayed constant, deep and throbbing. Sometimes, it felt like a sharp knife twisting when I bent even a little. The numbness in my legs spread further, and walking became slower and more awkward. I thought about asking my parents again, but I already knew what they'd say. They'd tell me it was nothing, that I just needed to toughen up. So I kept quiet, pretending it didn't hurt as much as it did, even though every movement reminded me something was wrong. The pain never really left. Each morning I woke up stiff, moving slowly just to get dressed. Some days it felt like my back was locked in place, every step heavy and careful. I started missing school because it hurt too much to walk to the bus stop or sit in a desk for hours. At first, I told myself it was just for a day or two to rest, but soon those days began to pile up. When I did make it to school, people noticed. Walking between classes took longer than it used to, and I caught myself leaning on walls when the pain grew too sharp. My left leg still felt strange, almost numb in places, and I limped without meaning to. Sitting in class was its own challenge. The hard chairs made my lower back throb, and I kept shifting around, trying to find a position that didn't make it worse. Teachers started asking questions. One of them, Mr. Miller, pulled me aside after history class and asked if I was okay. I told him my back hurt, but I didn't give many details. Another teacher, Ms. Harris, asked if I'd seen a doctor yet. I said no. She looked concerned and said I should get checked out. Later that week, my parents got a call from the school. They didn't tell me right away, but I overheard my mom talking on the phone in the kitchen. "She's fine," Karen said, her voice sharp. "Olivia has a habit of making things bigger than they. She's probably just looking for attention." I froze in the hallway, listening. The words stung more than I expected. She wasn't just ignoring my pain. She was telling other people it wasn't real. After that, things felt different at school. Some teachers still looked worried, but others seemed distant, like they believed what my mom had said. I started keeping to myself even more. I didn't want to explain or try to make people believe me. It felt useless. At home, nothing changed. Jake still made little comments, smirking when I walked past him slowly. Ryan didn't say much either way, but he never spoke up for me. Meals were the worst. My parents would talk to Jake about his sports games or Ryan about school, but when I joined the conversation, it either went quiet or turned into a joke at my expense. I spent more time alone in my room. The walls felt like they were closing in some days, but it was better than being in a room where people pretended not to hear me. I read books or scrolled through my phone just to distract myself from the ache in my back. Sometimes I lay still for hours, not because I was tired, but because moving hurt too much. I started to feel invisible, like I could disappear and no one in the house would notice for a while. My pain wasn't just in my back anymore. It was in the way my family treated me, in the way my mom's words to the school echoed in my head. If even my own parents didn't believe me, it was hard to imagine anyone else would. The day started like most others, slow and heavy. My back felt stiff, but I pushed myself to go to school. I didn't want to fall too far behind, even though just walking through the halls felt like dragging a weight behind me. By the time I got to history class, the pain had spread down my leg, making it tingle and go numb at the same time. I told myself I just had to get through the lesson. When the bell rang, I tried to stand, but my body didn't cooperate. My legs gave out before I could take a step. The floor hit me hard, and the shock made my head spin. A few students gasped, and chairs scraped as people moved back. My hands shook when I tried to push myself up, but my legs felt weak, almost disconnected from me. Ms. Harris rushed over and knelt beside me. "Don't move," she said firmly, her voice calm but urgent. She asked if I could feel my legs properly. I told her something was wrong, that they felt strange and heavy. Without hesitating, she pulled her phone from her pocket and called for help. I heard her say possible spinal injury, and "we need an ambulance right away." The paramedics arrived quickly. They asked me questions as they carefully helped me onto a stretcher. My classmates watched from the doorway, their faces a mix of curiosity and worry. I stared at the ceiling as they wheeled me out, my heart pounding in my ears. At the emergency room, I was taken into a small curtained space. A nurse checked my blood pressure and asked about my symptoms. I told her about the pain in my back, the numbness in my leg, and how it had been getting worse for weeks. She made notes quickly, her expression tightening as I spoke. Not long after, my mom arrived. Karen's face was tense, but it wasn't concern I saw, it was anger. She pulled the curtain aside and stepped in with her arms crossed. "Do you have any idea how this makes us look?" she said in a low, sharp voice. "Collapsing at school, getting carted off in an ambulance. Everyone's going to think something's wrong at home." I didn't know what to say. The truth was, something was wrong, but I knew she didn't want to hear it. She sighed and sat down, tapping her nails against the armrest of the chair. A doctor came in, a tall man with glasses. He introduced himself and asked me to try moving my legs in different ways. Some movements worked, but others sent sharp jolts through my back. He used a small tool to check my reflexes, frowning slightly as he worked. "I'm ordering an MRI," he said finally. "There are signs of nerve involvement. We need to see exactly what's going on." Karen frowned. "Is that really necessary? She's young. She'll bounce back." The doctor didn't look at her. "If this is what I think it is, waiting could cause permanent damage." The nurse began preparing me for the scan, adjusting the stretcher and checking my I lay still, staring at the thin curtain swaying beside me, wondering what the MRI would show, and if it would finally prove I wasn't making any of this up. The MRI room was cold and quiet, with only the hum of the machine filling the air. A nurse helped me lie down on the narrow table, reminding me to stay as still as possible. She placed a soft cushion under my knees to ease the strain on my back, but the position was still uncomfortable. The table slid into the tunnel, and the sound of loud, steady knocking began. I closed my eyes and tried to focus on my breathing while the machine worked. It felt like a long time before it was over. The nurse helped me sit up slowly and wheeled me back to my curtained space in the emergency room. I waited there alone for a while, the ache in my back spreading into my hips and down my leg. My mom sat in the corner scrolling through her phone, barely speaking. After what felt like forever, the doctor returned. His face was serious, and he held a folder in his hand. He pulled up a small rolling stool and sat beside my bed. "We have the results of your MRI," he said. "You have a fracture in one of the vertebrae in your lower back. There's also significant swelling pressing on your spinal cord." I felt my stomach drop. I had known something was wrong, but hearing it out loud made it real. "If this had gone untreated any longer," the doctor continued, "you could have lost the ability to walk. In some cases, injuries like this cause permanent paralysis. You were very close to that." Karen looked up from her phone but didn't say anything. I turned my head toward the doctor. "This happened weeks ago," I told him. My voice shook a little. "I asked my parents to take me to a doctor after I hurt my back, but they said it was just a bruise." The doctor glanced between us. "How did you get hurt?" he asked. I hesitated, but then I told him everything. The family dinner, Jake pulling the chair out from under me, the fall onto the hardwood floor, the pain that started right away. I explained how I couldn't walk properly afterward, how the pain got worse and the numbness spread, and how I kept asking to see a doctor, but was told I didn't need one. The nurse, who had been standing near the doorway, began writing notes quickly. The doctor asked a few more questions, making sure he understood the timeline. I told him about missing school, how my teachers noticed something was wrong, and how my mom told them I was just looking for attention. When I finished, the room was quiet for a moment. The doctor's tone stayed calm, but there was no hiding the edge in his voice when he said, "This is a serious injury. Ignoring symptoms like these is extremely dangerous. We'll need to keep you here for treatment and monitoring." Karen shifted uncomfortably in her chair, looking anywhere but at me. I lay back against the pillow, feeling a strange mix of fear and relief. Fear because of what the doctor had said about paralysis, and relief because finally, someone believed me. Not long after the doctor left, 2 other people came into the room. A woman in a dark jacket with a badge clipped to her pocket and a man carrying a notepad. They introduced themselves as part of the hospital's safety team. The woman explained that because of my injury and what I had told the doctor, they were required to contact Child Protective Services and the police. She said it was about making sure I was safe and that the situation was handled properly. Karen's head snapped up. "That's not necessary," she said quickly. "We can handle this at home." The woman shook her head. "With the information we've received, this is now a legal matter." A short while later, 2 uniformed police officers arrived. They asked me to explain everything again from the start. I told them about the dinner, the prank, the pain, and how I had asked for help but didn't get it. I made sure to include every detail, even the way my parents laughed when I fell and how Jake kept making fun of me afterward. One officer wrote down everything while the other asked questions to make sure the timeline was clear. They didn't rush me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like someone was actually listening. When they were finished talking to me, they stepped outside the curtain to speak with my parents. Karen's voice rose almost immediately. "This is ridiculous. She's exaggerating. Kids get hurt all the time." Mark tried to calm her down, but the officers kept their tone steady. They explained that the injury was serious and that not taking me to a doctor could be considered medical neglect. Not long after, they returned to ask if I knew anyone else who had seen what happened. I told them Aunt Lisa had been sitting at the table when it happened. One of the officers made a call, and about an hour later, Aunt Lisa walked into the hospital room. She came straight over to me, giving me a small, careful hug so she wouldn't hurt my back. The officers asked her about the dinner. Lisa didn't hesitate. She said she saw Jake pull the chair away, saw me fall, and saw the way my parents laughed. She told them I had looked hurt right away, and that she remembered me leaving the table slowly, holding my back. Her voice was calm but firm, and she didn't leave out any detail. While Lisa was speaking, Jake showed up at the hospital. He walked in like nothing was wrong, but the moment he saw the officers, his expression changed. They spoke to him separately, asking why he pulled the chair. I couldn't hear all of his answers, but I caught bits of him saying, "It was just a joke, and I didn't think she'd fall that hard." The officers didn't seem convinced. They told him that his actions could be considered reckless assault because of the injury it caused. Jake didn't have much to say after that. By the end of the day, everyone had been questioned. Karen and Mark were told they would be contacted again soon for follow-up. Jake was informed there would be an investigation into what happened. Aunt Lisa stayed with me for the rest of the evening, sitting in the chair beside my bed. She didn't say much, but just having her there made me feel less alone. The next few weeks were a blur of hospital visits, phone calls, and meetings with people I had never met before. I stayed in the hospital while the doctors worked on reducing the swelling in my back and helping me move again. Every day, someone from Child Protective Services came to check in. They asked questions about my life at home, not just about the accident, but about how my parents treated me in general. I answered honestly, even when it was uncomfortable. One afternoon, a woman from CPS came in with a serious look on her face. She told me that after reviewing everything, the medical reports, the police statements, and Aunt Lisa's account, they had decided it wasn't safe for me to go back home. She said I would be living with Aunt Lisa for now. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Leaving the house meant leaving behind the place I grew up, but it also meant leaving behind the people who had ignored me when I needed them most. That same week, I heard from the police that my parents were officially facing charges for medical neglect. Jake was being charged with assault and endangerment because of what he had done. I wasn't in the courtroom to hear it all, but my caseworker explained each step to me. She said the charges were serious and could lead to consequences that would follow them for a long time. A few days later, I was discharged from the hospital. Aunt Lisa came to pick me up, helping me into her car with slow, careful movement. She had set up a room for me in her house, with clean sheets, a soft blanket, and a small desk near the window. It felt strange to be somewhere so quiet after weeks of noise and tension. Lisa cooked dinner that night and didn't ask for details I wasn't ready to share. She just reminded me I was safe now. Part of my discharge plan included therapy. The court ordered it not only for my physical recovery, but also for the emotional trauma I'd been through. Twice a week, I went to physical therapy to strengthen my back and help me walk more comfortably. The exercises were hard, and some days I wanted to give up, but the therapist was patient and encouraging. On other days, I met with a counselor who listened without judgment. She didn't tell me I was overreacting or being dramatic. She asked how I felt, and when I didn't know how to answer, she waited until I found the words. Talking about the dinner, the pain, and the way my parents treated me was exhausting, but it also made me feel lighter each time. Life at Aunt Lisa's was different. There was no constant teasing, no one laughing when I struggled to move. She checked in on me without hovering and gave me space when I needed it. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my voice mattered. Even though my back still hurt some days and I knew the legal process wasn't over, I could finally see a path forward. I wasn't just surviving in that house anymore. I was starting over somewhere I could heal. Physical therapy became my main focus. Every session was hard, but I pushed through the pain, determined to walk normally again. The exercises started small, lifting my legs a few inches, holding my balance for a few seconds, but each week I got a little stronger. The therapist reminded me that recovery was slow, and I learned to be patient with myself. Every step I took without wobbling felt like a quiet victory. While I worked on healing, news about Jake started to spread. His football scholarship, the one my parents had bragged about for months, was taken away after the charges against him became public. The school said his behavior was not acceptable for someone representing their team. For years, he had been the favorite, the one who could do no wrong. Now people were seeing a different side of him. I didn't feel sorry for him. I thought about all the times he laughed at me, all the times my pain was treated like a joke. Losing the scholarship wasn't even close to the pain he had caused me, but it was the first time I had seen him face real consequence. As for my parents, I decided I didn't want any contact with them. They had ignored me when I needed help the most, and I couldn't forget that. I blocked their numbers from my phone. No more calls, no more texts, no more pretending we were a normal family. Aunt Lisa supported my choice, never pressuring me to reach out to them. Family gatherings were easy to avoid now. Even if I was invited, I didn't go. I didn't want to sit at another table where I felt invisible or be in a room where my pain was something to laugh at. My world had changed, and I wasn't going back to the one that broke me. Recovery wasn't just about my body. I was learning how to live without the constant weight of their judgment. In Aunt Lisa's house, I could laugh without worrying about who was watching. I could speak without being interrupted or mocked. Slowly, the tension I'd carried for years began to fade. One evening, after a long therapy session, I sat by the window in my room. The street outside was quiet, the air still. I thought about everything that had happened, the dinner, the fall, the hospital, the investigations. It felt like a lifetime had passed in just a few months. That prank didn't just hurt my back. It broke something else, something I had held on to for too long. The belief that family would always protect you. Now I knew better. Sometimes the people you expect to catch you are the ones who pull the chair away. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Sometimes walking away is the only way to protect yourself. But was Olivia right to leave her family behind for good? Or should she have tried to forgive them? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. And if you enjoy intense real-life stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're here for the next one.